Chapter 87.5. The sudden claps of thunder had returned. I was swiftly roused from what had seemed like the most tranquil slumber I had experienced in my entire endeavor with Richard Parker. As undernourished as I was, I still felt oddly pleasant, as though I had awoken from a bittersweet food coma after consuming too much of my mother's savory kitchen. I forced myself upwards and unleashed a beastly yawn and stretch, which must have been a habit I picked up from observing Richard Parker so keenly. My gaze casually led to him sitting on his territory of the boat, upright and as though frozen like a taxidermied cat, watching something off in the distance. I sat there for what seemed like hours watching him, curiously. A fact my father had informed me of when I was a child abruptly came to my mind. Richard Parker was a feline. Felines are well known for spending 75% of their days sleeping, and not once had he inched from to rest his statue-like structure. I looked past the direction he was facing and gasped. The boat had been lazily floating towards a minuscule island filled with voluptuous trees. I was already fantasizing of the marvelous shade they could have provided, the cool breeze I could have indulged in, and the soft sand I could have laid my weak body on. After being under the horrendously hot sun and in the humid rain for so long, my every essence needed leisure. My body shuddered with relief. I could have finally ate something other than flying fish and sharks. I could have made a fire, had a stable and sturdy ground to sleep on, or even better, maybe the place was a resort of some kind. We must have floated somewhere towards the south of America. Did Richard Parker and I find ourselves away to a beautiful Cuban beach that led to a hotel filled with people? Oh, how marvelous it would have been to see another human being, to be able to hear a response, to at least hear a hello. As I was basking in all of the possible glories the island would have provided us, Richard Parker turned sharply towards my direction. His glaring caramel eyes were locked onto me. I was deeply frightened. What was his intention? Was he hungry? I quickly fixed my gaze onto the water that surrounded the boat, for any movement of fish or sharks that I could capture for him to eat. You've lost just as I have. I froze in my position. Richard Parker spoke to me. Richard Parker? I mindlessly asked. Our families, our minds, he stated. His voice sounded as I imagined it to be, wise and gentle, although he was a savage creature. How are you? I was interrupted by a spontaneous strike of lightning, so close to me that I had lost my balance. The wind immediately began to pick up, and the sky became dreary and dismal. It all became a mess after that. The previous thunderstorm obviously did not prepare us for what was to happen. The boat commenced to rock back and forth. The force was so strong it threw me into the water. I held onto the side of the boat with all of my strength. The rough waves made it almost impossible to hold on, let alone try to get myself back into the boat. The blunt motion of the sea caused me to instantaneously collide my head with the edge of the boat. Everything became black. I presumed that I began to drown. Shortly after, I had suddenly awoken from my head injury, choking on the salty seawater. As salty as it was, I was far more concerned as to how my unconscious body managed to get back into the boat. I could have sworn I fell into the water. Was this an act of God? What happened to Richard Parker? You almost died out there. I pulled you back in. Out of my surprise, Richard Parker began talking again. I had almost forgotten what I had witnessed from him, previous to the accident. My conscious state of mind was flustered, and to top that off, the ill feeling of the salty seawater in my stomach made me feel very nauseous. At this point, I didn't know what to believe.